There are many things that can ruin your chances in a job interview. I've chosen about 15 of them that I think if you perfect or focus on, are aware of, will certainly improve your chances at getting the job. These are not in any particular order, but will help you tremendously just the same. Number one, lack of preparation. Let's talk about this for a moment. Before you go into the interview, do your research on the company or the organization. If you have a competitor situation, do the research on the competitors. Know what you're getting into. Interviewers want to know that when they're asking you questions, you are able to respond with intelligence about the answer itself, and maybe even some ancillary details you might be able to appropriately bring into the situation in sort of a tandem response, if you will, to the question. So be prepared. Know what you're getting into. Know what's going on. Don't seem unprepared, because that will ruin your chances of getting the job, most likely. Number two, overconfidence or arrogance, or maybe being too cocky. Remember, there are other people that they're interviewing. You're not the only one. You are not the only person qualified to do that job. So being overconfident, saying that I know everything, not saying it that way, but having that sort of air about you, that won't go over well in the interview. You need to have a balance between humility and confidence that shows in the interview so you don't turn them off. Number three, poor body language. If you're slouching in the interview, you're kind of sitting like this, sort of, right? That won't work. Sit up straight, head back, shoulders squared up, have good posture in the interview. Body language has a lot to do with whether they feel that you are confident in the job that you're interviewing for, that you're confident in your abilities, confident that you're qualified for the job, confident that you can do a good job if they should hire you. Body language tells them everything that they need to know. And if you're kind of like this, sort of slouching a bit when they're talking to you, when you're responding back just kind of casually, I don't think that they'll like that very much. And the probability of you getting that job is greatly diminished. Number four, lack of enthusiasm. My goodness, you want the job, right? When you go into the job interview, have some enthusiasm about you. Be somewhat, not over the top, but be somewhat excited that you have the opportunity to interview for this amazing job. Even if you don't think it's an amazing job, but maybe a job that'll get you on the next level up to where you want to go, have some enthusiasm about it. They don't want to hire somebody who is just kind of lackluster in their enthusiasm, lacking it. So be appropriately enthusiastic about the job, and your chances of success in the interview will greatly increase. Number five, inability to answer questions. You should be studying all sorts of different kinds of questions that might come up in the interview. Have several scenarios that you've practiced already ahead of time. Be able to answer questions that will likely come up. And not just chronological questions about what you did when on your previous jobs, those kinds of questions, but be thinking about questions that they might ask sort of out there in left field, and have some ready-made answers. Do some research and then do some practice at home, even if it's in front of a friend to prepare you. Be prepared to answer questions. You don't want to go into the interview, they start asking questions, and your answer is, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. Because getting back to the interviewer at a later date probably won't work. Because if they're interviewing 5 or 10 more people, or 15 additional people besides you, you can be certain some of those will be much more prepared than you were. And they will walk away from that interview with a much greater leg up. And their chances of getting the job over you are greatly increased. So be prepared and ready to answer questions. Number 6, lack of professionalism. It doesn't matter what job you're interviewing for, there is a relative amount of professionalism that you should be exuding in the interview. If it is a highly professional career, it's likely you're going to be dressing suit and tie and being well prepared for a highly professional career. However, if it is a middle to lesser professional type of a role, maybe it's an entry-level white-collar job or a blue-collar job, don't think that you don't need to be professional in your approach, in your attire, in your posture, in your handshake, in your voice, and in your preparation. Be professional, appropriate to the role that you're interviewing for. If you're not professional, someone else will be, and your chances will diminish. Number 7, poor time management. You don't want to get to the interview late. I always recommend getting to the interview 10 minutes or more earlier, even if it's waiting out in the parking lot before going in, because you may need to account for traffic. You may need to use the restroom before you go into the interview office or into the interview setting. So get there early. Do not be late. Also, a piece of the time management concern is when they ask questions and you're answering the questions, be careful not to drone on and 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 on, because they have allocated a certain amount of time for the interview. You want to be succinct in your answers and be respectful of the time that they've allotted. Now, if the time goes over because they're really liking you and they keep asking more questions, the longer the interview goes, the better, by the way. But that's okay. But that's on them. But your responses should be respectful of the probable allotted time that they're going to give you. So be careful in managing the time with how you answer your questions. Don't answer a question with such a short answer that it doesn't fulfill the requirements of giving a good answer. But just don't abuse it, okay? Respect their time. Number 8, lack of adaptability, handling change in the workplace. When they ask you questions about how you adapt to change, be careful not to answer with something like, well, I really don't like how things are changing so fast. I'm used to doing things this way, this way, this way. It's just really difficult to get up to speed, or that kind of answer. It's hard to adapt to all the change because it happens so fast. Don't answer in that way. Be willing to adapt to change. Let them know that you're always on the cusp of change and sort of evolution in our society as things continue to move on. You can know that while change occurred at a very slow pace 100 years ago, it's going at a rapid clip today. And if you don't stay on it, then you'll diminish your chances of success in the interview. So let them know that you are able to adapt to change by constantly staying abreast of technology changes and all the societal changes that take place around us, and you're the one for the job. Number 9, dishonesty. You must be honest during your interview. They will do a background check on you if you are considered to be among the candidates that they want in the final interviews and maybe actually to hire. If you answer any questions in the interview that are not honest and that they can then find out later you lied about, you will not get the job. You will have failed at all the preparation and all the work it took to get the interview in the first place. Be completely honest. I can't stress that enough. Honesty, honesty, honesty in the interview is crucial. If they find out that you are not honest in any aspect of the interview at any point in time, you will ruin your chances of getting that job. Mark my words. Number 10, among things that interviewers hate about interviewees, and that is lack of follow-up after the interview. If you don't follow up with the interviewers after the interview, thanking them for the opportunity, and maybe providing additional information that the interview time didn't quite allow for, they won't think you're as interested in the job as maybe you said you were. Remember, Many other people are interviewing for the same job, and they will follow up with good emails or text messages or even phone calls to say thank you for the interview. Thank you for the opportunity. Here are some other things I'd like to share with you about my background that time didn't appropriately allow in the interview. Something like that. Always follow up. If you don't follow up, they absolutely will not believe that you had that much interest in the job. And I've had many people that I have interviewed over the years who did not follow up. I never hired anyone who didn't follow up. Why? It wasn't obviously that important to them in my mind, in the mind of the interviewer. That is a death knell. Not following up. It will sink your chances of getting the job. Number 11, having no questions for the interviewer during an interview will hurt your chances of getting the job. Remember, the interview is not just a one-way. They ask you questions, you answer the questions. They ask you questions, you answer the question. They ask another question, you answer the question. It should be a two-way dialogue. You should have questions during the interview. And you don't necessarily have to ask them right at the very end of the interview. There might be times during the interview when you'd want to interject an appropriate question relative to their question that adds more dialogue, more back and forth to the process. But if not, that's okay. Be certain to have questions prepared that you can ask at the end of the interview. They will almost always ask, when they're done, do you have any questions for us? The worst answer you can give for the question at the end of an interview, whether you have questions for them, is no, I think I'm good. I no questions for me, because that shows lack of interest. It shows lack of enthusiasm. No matter how well the interview went, if you don't have questions for them, lack of interest, are you the one that they really want? Probably not. And they will likely not choose you. Number 12, I mentioned this briefly earlier when I talked about time management. But very specifically, being late for the interview itself is among the worst things that you can possibly do when you're trying to get a job, because you're starting out already in the hole. And if other people showed up before you because you were 15 or 20 minutes late and they were 15 to 20 minutes early, they just got the interview, and the next person got the interview, and the next, and you could be there for 3 hours waiting your turn. And if that's the case, you weren't just 15 or 20 minutes late. You're 3 hours late. And you will simply be digging yourself out of a hole that is very difficult to come out of. And the chances of getting the job are nearly zero. So, don't arrive late for the interview. Number 13, bad-mouthing your former employer or colleagues or even competitors is among the worst things you can do in an interview. It will kill your chances of getting the job. Why is that? If you badmouth your former employer, the interviewer says, if that's how he or she talks about his former boss, there's a good chance he'll talk about me that way too when he leaves this company at some point in time. You are showing that you take the low road when you badmouth your former boss or your former colleagues or even the competition. So don't do that. That will hurt you badly. Number 14, using foul language during the interview. I've yet to interview people who used foul language during the interview that I hired. Because if the best decorum they have, which typically you show during the interview, your best foot forward, is such that they can't clean up their mouth during the interview, how will they be once they are hired? That very thought goes through my mind and no doubt every other interviewer's mind when that happens by an interviewee. You won't get the job. That I can promise you, unless it's in a job that says, how much can you cuss? Number 15, looking or smelling unkempt, during the interview ain't good. It doesn't matter what kind of job you're interviewing for. Dress appropriately for it. Be neat, clean, tidy, clean shaven. Whether you have a beard or not is irrelevant unless they don't want that, in which case shave. But be cleanly shaven. Don't have a bunch of scruffy. Take a bath, right? Spray on some stinkum, some cologne. Be mild with it. Don't be overbearing with it. Brush your teeth, floss, gargle with some Listerine. Whatever you need to do to smell good, to be neat about your person. Comb your hair if you have it. If you don't, then buff your head if you're bald. You follow my point here. Please, 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 don't show up smelling bad, looking unkempt, kind of disheveled, sloppy. When you show up at an interview looking sloppy, smelling badly, or just having that sort of frumpy appeal about you, you're starting off in the hole. All your answers to their questions could be perfect. Everything else could be ideal. But if you're kind of sloppy or not kept very well, or it's a poor fitting suit or a shirt, or it has wrinkles, or your eyebrows are kind of like this because they're not right, it's not going to help you any. The rest of the interview is like, okay, what's the point? This person can't come to the interview looking and smelling decent and properly groomed and so on. I doubt that he'll come to work any better. In summary, everything about the interview must be perfect. Be prepared when you go into a job interview by looking good, smelling good, being properly groomed, having good posture, being properly confident, not cocky, not arrogant, being prepared, having some answers already rehearsed to likely questions that will come up so that you have a better chance of kind of rolling with the responses in a more natural way. Not that you want them to sound canned or rehearsed, no, but be prepared, be professional, be respectful, be on time, demonstrate respect for your former boss. There are lots of other ways that you can impress the interviewer to ensure you get at least to the next interview, maybe to the third, if there are three, and then finally the job offer. And always, always, always follow up after the interview. That is critical. Everything else in the interview can be perfect, but if you don't follow up afterwards to say thank you, here are some other things that I wanted to mention that time didn't allow, give us some more to chew on. If you don't do that, then the probability of you having success going into the next interview or even getting the job offer at all is pretty slim. Well, I hope these tips help you. That's what these videos are for. Please like, subscribe, share, do all those great things. Make some comments down below of situations in interviews where you were not prepared perhaps, or maybe it didn't go very well, and perhaps why it didn't go so well for you, because your comments below will help others who read those comments who might be preparing for an interview and can hopefully come out of it smelling like a rose. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.